Hey, Tommy from the Run Testers, another podcast special. In this episode, I'm going to be speaking to Kofuzi, a man that, if you're a fan of our channel, you probably know quite a bit about him already. We're going to be talking about loads of stuff from his favourite shoes, the type of foam he likes, to what he has coming up in terms of races. Hope you enjoy it. So welcome, Mike, or Kofuzi, as most people who are listening to this will know you as. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Great. Well, we've met before. We met when we both did Chicago Marathon, which is, of course, where you live.
Yeah.
I think most people who watch or listen to the Run Testers will know of you very, very well. So I don't think we need to do massive introductions, but it'd be good to just find out a bit more about how did you get into running?
Well, running was something that I kind of have been doing my entire life, kind of been on and off. I started running in middle school, so right around where my daughter's age right now, so like 10 or 11 years old. It's like after school program that we have available here in the States. A little bit different than the way you guys do kind of run clubs over there, but a lot of people in the US get introduced to running usually around that age is kind of like the earliest ages that kids get involved generally, or maybe a little bit older in high school. And that's when I started.
So you've been running for a while then?
Yeah, it's been on and off too. So like I did it all through school. I ran a little bit in college, but then I took a very long break in my adult years, kind of like a lot of people do. And then I came back to it kind of as not an old adult, but as a little bit older of an adult.
Nice. And you haven't always been a running expert, have you? You had another job before you started doing this full time.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I'm not sure when I became a running expert, if I can even call myself that at this point. But no, I mean, like have kind of like existing in this space, doing this kind of thing is relatively new. I only started doing it full time like a couple years ago. And before that, I was in the legal space. So I did go to law school, but I never really practiced law in the traditional sense. Instead, I went into consulting and I was helping attorneys who were conducting trials. And so helping them with the presentation aspects of their storytelling.
Wow. Bit of a change in career then.
It's very different. The things you wear are a little bit different, but ultimately a lot of the goals are the same in terms of what I was doing. If you can kind of abstract out a little bit from it, because it was about incorporating technology into helping people tell stories better. And so that's kind of what I did in the courtroom. And I'm kind of now applying a lot of those skills, on the internet now, just in a very different kind of forum.
Okay. And then the name Kofuzi.
Mm-hmm.
Where does this come from?
I mean, it's an old like college drinking name.
Right.
To be honest, that's like originally where it came from.
Mhm.
But like the name itself, Ko is my last name, and then in college I was taking like a East Asian religions or East Asian studies, some sort of like intro survey class. We were learning about Confucius, and so his last name was Kong, and Fuzi, I think, is in the Chinese. I don't speak Chinese, but I think that's how you say it, translated roughly to like master teacher, but it got like not Americanized, but anglicized into Confucius from Konfuzi. So then I kind of played around with that and made Kofuzi,
Wow.
the kind of like Americanized version of the anglicized version of Confucius. So kind of like two layers of separation there. It was really nerdy, but it was kind of fun.
That's a lot more confusing than I was expecting an explanation.
Yeah, so that's where it kind of came from. But then it was just more of kind of like a nickname I gave myself in college. And then it went away for a long time, and then I brought it back for the YouTube channel.
Nice. Well, it works.
Okay.
It's definitely a name that people remember when they're into the shoe world.
Yeah. I think it's fun to have kind of like, because when I started making videos again, these days everyone just uses their regular name. But at the time, it was still kind of at the tail end of when everyone kind of had a handle on the internet. And so like, had it been like a year or two later when I started making videos on the internet, it probably would have just been under my regular name. But since it's a kind of a product of the time. So
Yeah.
it's Kofuzi. It's a pseudonym rather than a regular name.
Well, you're lucky. It's quite a cool sounding name. There's a lot of people who've got handles that aren't quite as don't sound quite as good.
Yeah,
I've got
well, and also like it gives you a sense of like how old I am too, because it's not like Kofuzi like 17394. It's just
yes,
there's no letters or numbers afterwards. It's just Kofuzi.
yeah. Well, we won't talk about how old we are. All right. Well, let's dive into what people are listening for, and that's the shoes. So, a lot of these questions are questions that I've asked other guests, and it's interesting to see basically what the difference is in what people are coming back with. And one of the big ones I always ask is, what is the first running shoe? And you've been running for a while. There's a lot of people that I've spoken to who maybe started running later in life. So the shoes that they answer with are probably going to be a bit different than yours. But what's the shoe that you really remember blowing you away and you thought, wow, this there's something really special about this running shoe?
I mean, I think it'd have to go to be one of my old like sentimental favorites, and that's going to be the Nike Pegasus 32 Shield.
Wow.
I'd
Okay.
enjoyed the Pegasus 32 a lot. I think I bought like 3 or 4 pairs of that shoe in that year, and then I was thinking, you know what? I always kind of run in the summer, and then I take all winter off, and then I get out of shape, and then I have to redo it all over again. Even though I live in Chicago and the winters are hard, and I was just thinking, there's got to be a better way for me to kind of run all year round, even though the Chicago winters can get messy. And so I kind of like went onto like the Nike website and did like a chat, and I was like, hey, I really like this shoe, but I need something to run in the winter. And they were like, well, we have a Shield version. And I was like, oh, for real? I didn't know that. And so I bought that one, ended up loving it. And it was kind of unlocked for me the idea that I can run year round and that I don't have to kind of like, start over every single spring. And so that shoe meant a lot to me. And I also just really liked it. I still have that shoe
Wow.
now. It's one of the few shoes that I've held on to from way back then, because it meant a lot to me to be able to kind of unlock that.
And this was back in the time where you maybe had one pair of shoes.
Yeah, that was usually like one pair of shoes at a time. And so maybe I had 2 to kind of alternate, but it would be 2 of the same shoe. So I think from like Pegasus 32 to like 34, that's the only shoe that I bought. And I would just buy multiple pairs of them over and over again.
Yeah, it's pretty common, I imagine. When you've got one pair of shoes, you just stick with the one that you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, well, at the time, there weren't like a ton of like the ecosystem wasn't as robust now in terms of the information that was out there, or maybe it was, but I was just having a harder time finding it. And so like I could either get this shoe that I know works for me, or I could take a risk on something else. And I just didn't want to take all those risks. And so I was like, this one works. I like it. So let's just buy it again and keep going.
Nice. Well, that's definitely an older version of a shoe than we've had previously on the podcast. All right. Well, let's talk about current shoes then. So, I mean, I can see from your background, which is a real background.
Yeah, there's real shoes.
Real shoes that there's a lot to choose from, and it's a tricky one. I have the same problem. I've got a pile of shoes, not as neat as yours, but and choosing my current favorites is really difficult. So, what would you say at the moment are those shoes that are really standing out to you?
Well, I just finished running, and for me, finishing running in a shoe is usually 100 miles, just because I want to make sure I'm getting to as many shoes in the year as possible. So I just finished running in the Nimbus 25. Absolutely love that shoe. I just finished running also in the Cloud Surfer, which has never been kind of near the top of my list for their shoes. So I'm really excited to see that they have a great one. And just today I ran in the DV8 Nitro 2, which I think may be Puma's best shoe that they have out right now. I think it's a great shoe and it has gotten a lot of attention, but I still think it's a little bit underrated. So that's just been a really great shoe for me.
Yeah, it's an interesting year there's a lot of shoes, there's a lot of brands that are reinventing some of their lines. You picked 2 there, and both of them were a massive surprise to me when the Nimbus. I've never been a massive fan of the Nimbus. It's always been sort of a solid shoe, but I think a lot of the run testers are really really impressed with that shoe. And the Cloud Surfer is, it's not often we get an on shoe and everyone says, "Wow, this is good shoe. There's something about this shoe." How are you finding? What are you finding the Cloud Surfer? Was it Cloud Surfer 7? It is. What are you finding is the best use for that shoe?
I really like it for just kind of everyday general daily training. And so like if I am going for an easy run, it's a pretty good choice. If I need to throw some strides into the run, it can certainly handle it. And I think it's even soft enough for me to take on some recovery runs as well. Depending on kind of what else you have in the rotation, it may be one of the softer shoes that you have. And so I kind of really gravitate to like soft, mushier shoes for recovery. It's not the softest, mushiest shoe in my kind of collection, but it is on that softer end, which I think is very unique for On, because for
Mm.
me, On historically have been a little bit on the firmer side. So it's been really refreshing to see them willing to tinker and change and experiment with something that's important to them as a cloud surfer.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I've been really enjoying it. I've not. Are you at 100 miles in the Cloud Surfer now?
Yeah. Hmm.
And how's it holding up? That's one of the questions we get quite a lot, and I don't think any of us have got to 100 miles in it yet.
Yeah, I still like it, and so that's another unique thing for me. Like, there's been a couple of On shoes where the first couple of runs, I'm like, "This is it. On's finally like they're on that upward trajectory. I'm really excited about this." And then about like, halfway through 50, 60 miles of my testing, then I'm like, I don't really feel like running in this shoe anymore. But with the On Cloud Surfer, I continued to want to reach for it. And so that was really exciting and a really good sign for me. I think that it might not be quite as like peppy as it was right out of the box,
Mm.
but it doesn't feel like it's dying anytime soon. So it's a little bit more on the comfort side than it is on the speedy side for me at 100 miles. But for what I want that shoe to be, I think that's a great kind of like change or like kind of development, and it's progressing in a way that is really pleasant for me.
Yeah, it should be really exciting to see how they use that foam in across the other shoes as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely think that yeah, it's a really good move for On to start doing that. I always find with when you've got as many shoes as we've got that if it's a shoe that you want to take out of, I don't know how many you've got, but I've probably got 80 to 100 pairs floating around the house. And if there's a shoe that I constantly pick up out of that pile, that's a pretty good sign that there's something going on with that shoe that's really making it work.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, that's like a primary indicator of when if I think a shoe is still good at that 100-mile mark is, do I
Mhm.
still feel like running in it? Because there's not a lot of shoes that are bad, but there's a lot of shoes where I'm just like, I
Yeah.
don't really want to run in that, but I probably need to for testing purposes.
Yeah.
So I do get that from time to time, and so like I always try to notice when I'm excited to run in a shoe at that 100-mile mark. And I always try to like, in terms of my reviewing kind of process, I always try to like think about like, well, why am I so excited? Like, what's getting my interest peaked,
Yeah.
and why does it keep floating to top of mind for that shoe? And so that's one that has, and yeah, it's been really good to see from On because they do a lot of things right from the brand, and like sometimes the shoes haven't kind of lived up to what the rest of the brand is doing, and now
Yeah.
I feel like they're becoming like that whole package.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we spoke a bit about foams there.
Mhm.
What is your? This may be a difficult one for you to answer, but what is your favorite foam in a shoe? What brand has got the foam that you think this is the really at the top of the list here?
Yeah, right now I think it's got to be FF Blast Plus. So like I think that there's a lot of things that they've been doing with it, so it can be a variety of different densities, which I know can be very confusing to consumers. But they can do a lot of things with it, so it can serve as a max cushion shoe in the Nimbus 25, and it can serve as a daily trainer in the Nova Blast 3, and it could be a speed day shoe in the Magic Speed 3. So it could do a lot of different things. But I just generally feel like if that's in the shoe, there's a pretty strong indicator that I'm going to like it. So that's kind of clear number one for me. But number two behind it is probably fuel cell. But I love fuel cell more in kind of daily trading applications. And it's not my favorite racing foam, but for like in the Rebel 3, I think it's really fantastic. So that's another foam where I'm like, if it's in like Rebel 3 daily training type of application, I'm like, that's going to be a fun, squishy, bouncy foam because I like the foams that move a lot. And so like I know that one does.
Yeah, I'm fully with you on that one. It's I sort of want a shoe, regardless of what I'm using it for, to sort of feel it on the run. And there's a lot of shoes that you get where you go out for your run, you come in, you don't think about the shoe. That's not a bad thing. There's some people that's probably quite good because you don't have to worry about it. And But yeah, I think definitely for me, fuel cell is one of my top ones because I just as soon as you get a fuel cell shoe, you look at it and you go, I know this is going to feel interesting. It might not necessarily feel the same as another fuel cell shoe, but there's going to be a bit of life in that. And I think that's an interesting uh, comparison between the fuel cell and the other foams that the brand's got, because they really do feel very different. And it's sometimes you get one of the other shoes and you go, I just wish it had fuel cell in. Everything else is right about this shoe. Just wish it had a bit of fuel cell. But it's probably there's people that like the more stable traditional style foam as opposed to that fuel cell. But yeah, I agree with you. Fuel cell's a fantastic foam. Okay, so from good things to bad things, is there anything about running shoes that something that the brands do or a specific brand has done where you think you're not very happy about? You infuriates you a bit that brands are doing this.
I feel like that sometimes. I mean, one thing that comes to mind that I reviewed recently was the Pegasus, and I'm very frustrated with the way Nike's treating the React foam in the Pegasus, because React can be a really good foam. I mean, there's some of my favorite running shoes have had React foam in it, but the Pegasus always, well, not always, but since like 37 to now we're on number 40. I just feel like they're putting a very dense version of React foam in there, and I don't understand why. It's kind of like the later versions of the Zoom Fly, just very stiff, and it kind of takes all the fun parts out of React, and it just makes it feel kind of like a brick, in my opinion, to be very blunt. And so, like, that's always frustrating to me, in that, like, to extrapolate what frustrates me about brands, not just that brand of Nike, is that sometimes like brands will get very stuck into like, well, this is kind of what the consumer is expecting from this shoe, so we can't deviate too much from it. And so I feel like there's a lot of times where it's just a lot of kind of fear of adapting and updating, that keeps shoes from being, really what they could be, given what other new technologies are available or what other kind of features that they can put into a shoe.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's a tricky one, isn't it? I think I talked to some of the guys about this the other day, where you have these certain Pegasus is one of these brands that is so steeped in legacy and history that, like you said, you had so many versions of the Pegasus, and there's probably thousands of people that do that. I like the Pegasus. I've been running in it all the time. I'm not going to risk getting another shoe. And you have other ones as well, like the Clifton. The Clifton has always been pretty much the same sort of shoe. And have you tried the latest Clifton? Is it the 9? That came
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, I feel like the 9 is a departure,
Yeah,
and so that's one of those situations where like you can depart from kind of like what I guess the franchise has traditionally been, and I think it's very successful. I think
yeah,
for me, it's one of the best Cliftons that I've ever run in. But I can understand that there might be some of like those people that, I mean, I feel like people that ran in the Clifton 1 are just like a special breed of people. They have a
yeah,
different level of fandom for the Clifton, and they also seem to hate all the new Cliftons.
yeah.
So like, you may be alienating them, but like, I think that the Clifton 9 is one of the more approachable Cliftons that they've ever made. And it's the daily trainer. It's kind of like the workhorse in the stable. I feel like that shoe needs to be as approachable as possible. And I think the direction they're going on it is really good. And so like you can have, like a keystone shoe in the lineup change and still be successul.
Yeah, it's a fine line, isn't it? And I think what I find with the Clifton 9 is that I've never liked the Clifton range. Every time I get one, I'm like, oh, okay, I've got to test this one now, have I? And it's a bit dull, it's a bit firmer than I normally like, and I'm not quite sure what to use it for. But I remember getting the Clifton 9 and just thinking, oh, hold on, there's a little bit, not the same as the Cloud Surfer, but it's a bit softer. It just feels like there's more to that shoe. And I remember running it going, oh, actually mind this. This is quite good. But it's not too far away, so it hasn't really alienated the fan base. It's just tweaked it a bit, which I think is a smart way to go. I'd like to see the Pegasus do that, and
Yeah, I really thought with the 40th version, it'd be like a 40th anniversary version. I thought there would be more fanfare as well.
yeah,
And so it's kind of like, I don't want to say a lifelong fan, but as like a long time Pegasus fan, I was very disappointed that it was just like, here's number 40. We put
yeah,
another Zoom Air pocket in there, and I'm just like, I know that is a big deal. That's not a small thing, but like, it's 40. That,
yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal. And I just felt like that was another kind of miss by Nike on that one.
Yeah, and every time these new shoes gets released, they're slightly more expensive, and you go this whole thing where it's as a shoe reviewer, it becomes very difficult to say get this shoe because when it's something like the Pegasus Foot, you go you don't need if you've got the older one,
Mhm.
you've got the basically the same thing, or just go and buy the older one. It's very difficult to say oh get the new one which is more expensive for no reason. So and I think that's a lot of brands know that now. And you look at the likes of Asics, they're really changing up what they're doing. So you know if you look at something like the Nimbus 25, you go well actually this is a different shoe. So the 24 is not going to do the job for you if you want all these benefits.
Right. Yeah.
And yes, all right. So this is a big question for you, and it's my favourite question
Okay.
that we do. It's the Frankenstein shoe question. Now, this is
Okay.
basically if you could make a shoe out of different elements of all the different brands out there or different shoes out there, what would your shoe be made of?
That's an interesting question. You know, I get the question like similar questions a lot, like what would you design if you were designing your own shoe? And I say like you don't want me to do that because it would look like a Franken shoe. So I like this question a lot.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't think I don't want to make a shoe. I don't want to be a shoe designer or anything like that. But I think that like the closest thing to a Frankenstein shoe that I would ever want, I think kind of exists already. And it would be like something very much like the Primax.
Okay.
Something that is like kind of ludicrously tall because I live big, tall shoes to the point that they're unstable. I've told many brands, like, if you want to make a fun shoe, make it like, ooh, I think people are going to hurt their ankles on this. Then you're on the right track. So that's kind of like what I want. Something that's kind of like unstable, something that's like super bouncy. So like the Prime X with its 2 layers of carbon, the energy blades, and then the energy rods that are in there definitely is something that's super fun. The Light Strike Pro that's in there is also really fun too. But I was like, you know, if we're gonna go Frankenstein, let's put a bunch of fuel cell in there because that is super squishy and is going to move a lot. So like that would be a lot of fun. And then let's put a knit upper on top. You know, so like that, I love knit uppers. I think that they're underrated.
Mm.
And anything with a knit upper, I'm just going to instantly love. So that I think that's kind of would be my Frankenstein shoe. Mostly prime, like you know, mostly Prime X with a couple of tweaks.
I have many friends who would very much jump at the chance of getting that shoe. What are you thinking? 90 millimeters?
I mean, I think you know, for if we're making a Frankenstein shoe, especially if it's fuel cell, I think we could crack 50 easy. I mean, we should go to like 55, maybe.
Why
We
not?
should,
Why not? Might as
why
well.
not?
Yeah, as long as you're not running on like trails or something. But that's get a
Exactly.
nice flat road. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
But I imagine over in the future we'll see some of those just fun shoes coming out.
Yeah, you know, here's the thing. I think that like if you were to run along the Charles in Boston, I think that if you just waited like on a park bench long enough, you probably would see something like that because there's a lot of brands that are headquartered in that area.
Yes,
And
yeah,
my understanding is that like a lot of times these product guys will get together and just run in their shoes. And so you could be seeing this random group of like 3 or 4 guys running along the Charles River in Boston, and you might see something that ludicrous.
yeah.
And it could be from a variety of brands, but none of them will have logos on it. So that'd be your key. So, you know, maybe we need to do like a shoe spotting kind of day on a
Yeah.
bench in
Well, I'll be
Boston.
in Boston next year, so I'll get
Okay.
there a bit early
All right.
and do some watching. But I know some of those brands, and I do know some of the discussions and
Yeah.
like not prototypes they look at and things like that. And yeah, I'm with you. It's some interesting stuff going on. Just move away from shoes slightly and talk about running accessories. So is there just an accessory that you just can't live without? It might be something you've had for years and it's just always there. What have you got?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it'd be the GoPro. So I take the GoPro with me for every single run, just because every run I'm testing a shoe, and so like I just collect all the footage. And also, you never know what weird is going to happen. You spend enough time running, and you know this, you're going to end up seeing some weird stuff. And sometimes you'll be like, I wish I had that on camera because no one's going to believe the story. So I always just like to have the camera with me. For that reason, a lot of people, run with their phones. They could do something pretty similar to that. But for me, the thing that I'm always running with is a GoPro.
Nice. You're on the GoPro 11.
Yeah.
Haven't tried that one yet. I've been holding it up. I thought I'd skip this one and get the 12. It sounds
Yeah.
like there's going to be some big changes in 12.
Yeah, I think that's a good move. If you're on the 10, there's not really a lot of reasons to get the 11, in my opinion. But if you're on like 9 or 8, then, I feel like GoPros are getting to that point where it's like every other year is a really good time to upgrade.
Yeah.
Um, I get one every year just because I'm pretty hard on them. I run with one every day, but also like I review them every year. And so like that's the reason why I get it. But I think for most people out there, like getting one every year is not really necessary.
And you've not wanted to investigate. You have got an Insta, haven't you? Insta 360.
Yeah. Mhm.
And how do you find it? You use the X2, don't you?
X2 and X3. So like
Okay.
those are the two that I've been using. The X3 updated, and so now they have the high frame rate again.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a kind of I don't want to call it a fiasco. Well, maybe it was a fiasco with them. So there was a little problems with kind of the release of the latest 360 camera, but since then, like through firmware updates, those have been resolved. So I've been really enjoying that one. I like their 360 camera. I don't really love the Go. They're little small ones
Yeah.
quite as
Yeah.
much. I could see why they're very popular with runners, but they just don't. I don't find too much benefit in the extra lightness of it because I'm used to carrying a GoPro sized one, and the
Yeah.
GoPro gives me a little bit better resolution and clarity, so I prefer that.
Yeah. I tend to use the GoPro more than that. I tend to use the Insta 360 X3 if I
Mhm.
want to have a play and come up with some interesting shots. But
Yeah,
really, the GoPro is if I'm doing shoe shots, they're the best quality I can get.
yeah, yeah. I agree.
And there's a question for you then. I don't normally talk to people about cameras. Normally just talk about shoes, but I know you're quite keen on the cameras as well. So when you're running, do you always hold the GoPro, or do you have like a holster to put it in?
No, it's always in my hand, but like I'm kind of holding it like as you would like if you were walking around with a hammer, you wouldn't just walk around with it at the end. You might hold it at the top
Hmm.
because then it's kind of like the balance is a little bit better. So I have
Yeah,
like a stick and then the GoPro is on top, and I'm kind of holding the stick. I'm trying to think if my GoPro's down here. It's not. So I'm holding it kind of like at the base of where the GoPro would be. And
yes,
for like 95% of the run, it's like that. And then it's only like the stick is only extended when I'm filming. And the clips are usually pretty short, like 10 seconds.
yeah. I've always been I've always wanted because I might take mine out. It'll be a I don't know 2 hour run, and I get really when it's hot, it gets really sweaty in the hand. So
Mhm,
I
mhm.
really want some sort of holster. I was thinking like a He-Man holster in the back that I
Yeah.
can just pull out and quickly film and then stick it back in. But I haven't found anything that works yet.
Yeah, one thing that I did because I tried to film an FKT attempt that I did, it was a 30-mile attempt. And I knew that it was going to get super sweaty and gross. And then once like the sweat gets on there, then your footage is all just kind of cloudy, and then you're
Yeah,
just ruined for the rest of the run. And so I was like, well, I got to figure out a way to avoid that problem. And I also wanted to use a little bit of 360 camera and a little bit of GoPro. And so I eventually found this mount that kind of it's like a magnetic mount, so you can quick change on your stick. And then I would in my pack put the camera inside like a Ziploc bag, so that way when it's real sweaty, your pack's gonna get sweaty too, and that wetness is what ruins like the camera image. And so I'd put it inside a plastic bag, and then I also in another bag had like dry paper towels, so that way I could like wipe off the sweat if it did get sweaty. So that's like the only things you could do, but it only works really if you have a pack with you. And so like for races it doesn't work, and a lot of times for races you just gotta like hopefully you're not dripping sweat down your arm onto the camera, because then your footage isn't going to be as good.
yeah. It's people listening to this probably don't know the pain of trying to get running shoe footage, especially when it's raining and
Yeah.
you've got to keep wiping the top because even when you wipe them, it sometimes still doesn't look great, does it?
Yeah, yeah, you
It's
gotta
hard
like
work, people. Don't take it for granted.
yeah.
All right. Well, you mentioned races there. Now you've done a lot of races over the past. Well, some people I speak to have only been racing for a few years. When did you start probably doing endurance racing?
My first marathon was in 2010,
Mhm.
and it went terribly, so I took a 6-year break from running after
Right.
that. And then I get back to marathoning maybe 2017.
Okay. And out of how many have you done now? Do you think?
I don't keep track anymore. I think I did 5 or 6 last year.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. You do a lot of race videos, don't you? It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so out of all of the marathons you've done, which I'm guessing I might know your answer, but which is your favorite?
I would have to say, I have to give 2 answers. Chicago is like my hometown race, and it's a world marathon major, and I feel like I get to like welcome everyone to my home, so I love that one. But I also just ran Tokyo, and like that was just like running in a different world. So it was a phenomenal experience. I highly recommend it if anyone has the chance, or if you're thinking about it, I'd say do it. It's an incredible race. So between those two,
Nice. Well, I don't need any tips for Chicago because I already got those off you before I raced, or before we both raced. But I will be doing Tokyo hopefully year after next, so I probably will
okay,
come to you for some tips for that.
cool, yeah.
Have you done all the majors you've done now, or is there some that you still need to do?
No, I have 2 left. So I have to do London and Berlin, and then I'll have all 6.
Are you doing either of them anytime soon?
You know, I don't know. My plan would be to do them both in 2024.
Okay.
But you know, lotteries are difficult, and so like I kind of have them penciled in on my calendar. And I feel like 24 is the year where if I don't get in lottery, then I'll have to, you know, go the more expensive route, you know, and do maybe
Mm.
like a marathon tour, that kind of thing.
Can you do, because you've done Boston? Did you say?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you could do. I think I'm probably doing London next year because I've got good for age in Chicago, so
Mhm.
I think I get guaranteed entry into it. So
Yeah.
maybe you can because I think
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, well, we'll be there. We'll be there. So if you
Okay.
decide to do it, and then I think I'll do Berlin this year. So sounds like you're not going to make this year for Berlin.
You know, there's a chance, but
Yeah.
you know, it's not clear yet. So it's a weird situation.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about running shoe brands. So
Okay.
every year we've talked a little bit about it, but there always seems to be a couple of brands that are really doing well every year, and then other brands sort of dip out and they seem to have a low year where they're not really pushing anything. What brands at the moment do you think are the ones that are really ones to watch over the next few months?
I mean, over the next few months, I feel like we haven't heard all that much from Adidas yet. Still think that some of their biggest franchises, we're still waiting for shoes. So, like, I don't know if we're going to get a Primex update this year. I think we're going to get an Adios Pro update this year. So, like, those would be 2 shoes that I'm really looking forward to. I did get to try the Primex 2 on in the
Ooh.
running event in Austin last December. And I mean, that's basically my Franken shoe right there, like all my dream things in one shoe. So like that's one. I do think they have a couple of other releases that will be coming later in the year. That like you know we've heard a little bit about the Boston so far. They've released like the Adios 8. The Takumi Sen has been really great, but I think that kind of came out last year, really. But I think some of their biggest hits are still to come, and so like I think Adidas is the one to watch maybe in the next 6 months.
They've been pretty. We always call them Adidas over here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know.
We get comments from everyone saying you're pronouncing it wrong. We,
I
we
get
get
it
that
too.
with every shoe brand
Yeah.
basically. So yeah, Adidas is a funny one, isn't it? Because it's just a consistent. It's consistently putting stuff out, and a lot of it is very good, but nothing ever really seems to be that exciting. I mean, the Adidas Pro 3, love that shoe, think it's fantastic, and really like running in it. But I felt over the last year that it's never really got the sort of awareness or anything that some of the other big shoes did. I think maybe because it was just sort of a consistent. Everyone went, yeah, it's good, I like it, yeah, I'm going to buy that one. But it didn't really sort of get a whole marketing thing around it that some of the other big brands did, especially with some of the Nike and stuff like that with the really the big releases.
Yeah, you know, I think part of that too is that like the Adios Pro has tended to come out like really late in the summer. And so I think that part of that is like a lot of people have done a lot of buying because don't ever seem to have like big releases right before Boston Marathon, which I always feel like is kind of a miss for them.
Mm.
And then they do have, you know, the Adios Pro come out in time for Berlin. But I always feel like there's kind of an underwhelming push to get that on people's feet for Berlin. And then I think that kind of trickles, then you're not going to see as much of a push for people wearing it in Chicago or New York, which has always been a little bit surprising because I do think that it is one of the better race shoes that is out there. So I really liked it. I thought it was really good. All 3 versions I've really enjoyed. And I agree with you that it's like, it's really successful, but it could be more successful.
Yeah. All right. Well, so leading on from that, I'm going to give you 3 different running shoe brands, and all you need to do is tell me the best thing about them. So it could be a feature, could be a shoe, could be an
Okay.
ethos,
Okay.
anything that comes to mind when you do it. So Nike, what's the best thing?
Okay. Um, when they want to change something, they can change it very effectively. And so like when they wanted to make a new race shoe, they were able to make a kind of like industry changing race shoe. I mean, like the running industry looks completely different now because of the Vaporfly and what they did with it, because they decided we want to make something different, and they put all their might behind it, and they did it very effectively. So that's something that they can do.
Nice. Okay. Saucony.
Saucony, I feel like they have a really good sense of who their customer is and what they're delivering to that customer. And I think that they're not as big. I don't mean, I mean, I don't know like the relative sizes, like market cap or anything like that, but I get the sense that they're not nearly as big as some of their competitors, but they are punching way up above their kind of like weight class. And I think they do that by understanding exactly what their customers want and delivering it to them in a very effective way.
Good answer. Okay, then one more. Puma.
I think that they are doing a very good job of showing people that they're here for the running space. Because like I think they kind of disappeared for a little while, and then I know when they started bringing shoes back, and I guess it was like maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago now at this point, where we started seeing like the nitro foam shoes coming in. Everyone was like, "This is interesting," but like, who's Puma in the running space at this point anymore? We're not sure. And is this like a 1 or 2 year experiment? I think they've proved that they're definitely here. They're investing in athletes. They're investing in events. They're investing in community. So I feel like they've showed up and they put their money where their mouth is, and they're here. They're here to stay.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I find Puma to be really interesting at the moment because they're in a really interesting position in what they're doing. They seem to be very experimental, very much driving stuff forward. Not sure they're not sure that if it is all going to work, but it's exciting to see. And you see a lot of the other brands and things like Nike where they're delivering new stuff, but if you look at things like the Nike Vaporfly 3, Alpha 2, it's slightly changing a model that works as opposed to you look at some of the stuff from Puma like the Fast R and things like that. They come out and you think, what's it for? I don't even know what it's for. And if you're not unsure what the shoe's for, it's interesting. Like I love getting I love opening a shoebox and going, right, I absolutely have no idea when I'm going to use this. So
Yeah. Do you think though that like regular customers like that as much? Because I feel like part of me is like, am I just like a jaded reviewer now? And I'm like, oh, I'm not entertained. Like this shoe because I'm not like wowed by it, and I'm like, I demand novelty. Like, do you think there's a little bit of that going on there with you, or like, do you think that like regular people think that too?
I think there's two sides to it. So I think there's a group of people that are like us, and they want exciting things. They want to. It's normally the people who may be racing a lot or spending a lot of money on going around the world to these races, and they really want that excitement around running. The new Vaporfly 3, things like that, where it's like that's a milestone. But I do think there's a side of Puma which is something that is quite difficult. So I think those shoes are fine. I think they sort of sit in this realm of being the fun, exciting shoes. And really, if I bought any Puma shoe, it would be the Deviate Nitro Elite 2. I probably wouldn't ever pick up one of these quite niche shoes. But I think with Puma, the area that they, as you say, that it is quite confusing probably for consumers because they don't know what shoe to get. And I think that's Puma's big problem at the moment. Even if you go to the other side of the market, which is, I just want a daily shoe. I just want a cushion shoe. I went to a shop the other day and I was looking at the Pumas, and it just all seems so confusing. Whereas if you look at, it's pretty simple with Nike, isn't it? You go in there, that's a race shoe, that's a cushion shoe. Fine, I know which one to get. And I think Saucony's got a similar problem at the moment. They've got a lot of different lines, and they all seem to be doing a similar thing. So if you said to me, okay, I want a cushion shoe from Saucony, you're like, okay, what? Maybe there's stability cushion shoe. You've got the Shift, you've got the Tempest, and all these ones. Really difficult to sort of navigate that. And now we've got I don't think I can talk about it, but there's other shoes coming out from them. Which again, I opened box the other day and I was like, hold on, what? The older version of this didn't do this. The new version,
Yeah.
this is like, okay, I don't quite see it. It seems like they're sort of stacking up these shoes, and you could pick any of 4 shoes for the same reason, and it's very confusing. But yeah, I suppose that's and I think Saucony and Puma are the two brands that are really doing that a lot.
Yeah, I think that it goes in cycles too, because like brands will kind of expand the product catalog and then kind of see what sticks.
Yeah.
And then there'll be like a cull, and then like certain things will go away. I think New Balance had that a couple of years back when we had like the Zante Pursuit. We had like all these different weird name shoes in addition to all their number shoes, like the 880, the 1080, 860, all those. And then a lot of that went away. I mean, some of it still lives on kind of in their casual and gym space, but like from the running space, a lot of it kind of got narrowed down. And so there's kind of like you figure out, all right, what's gonna kind of work, and then you have to narrow it down. I think Saucony's on that. They're experimenting, in terms of like what all to do. I think that like I don't know if the Endorphin series was intended to be a capsule collection that existed for 3 years, but I think because of its success, like they can't get rid of it now. And so
Yeah.
like, does everything become like the Endorphin series, or does there exist a separate Saucony part outside of the Endorphin series? And how does that look when you're looking and you line them up all on the table? What then? And so I think I agree with you that it can be confusing, but something that I always try to tell people is that like, just because a brand offers 10 shoes doesn't mean that they're telling you got to buy 10, and so there's some times where it's like, people are like, all right, well, what's the difference between a Nova Blast and a Cumulus? I'm like, well, they both are supposed to do the exact same thing, but for two different people. We're all different. We all have different feet. We all have different preferences. And so like, there are a lot of shoes. It can be confusing, but it's like, think of them as like, these are options. There's a lot of runners in the marketplace and a lot of preferences. So the great thing about that is we get lots of things that will feel like these were made just for me. And I just love that feeling.
Yeah, and I suppose the other side of that is a lot of the foams and things. Puma's a good example where a lot of those shoes are they're really designed for elite, sub elite runners that are going to understand the benefits of those foams. If you look at some of I think it's the Fast R. The Fast R one's got the hard heel section, hasn't it, and then the softer front, and obviously the only people who are going to understand that are the people that are running fast, and they're working out what the benefit of that is. And there's probably a level of it which is they go, we don't really know. We've got a plan for what we know what we think it will be like, but we want the feedback from people to really understand what works. And it's exciting. It's good to see that. I like to see brands learning from the consumer as opposed to saying this is the shoe, we're always going to make the shoe the same, we're not going to listen to how people use it. Definitely a lot of that going on with Puma. Okay, so this is a tricky one. We obviously had complex shoes as a big thing, still is a big thing, but it's become normalized now. It's there's not a lot of excitement around the carbon plates of shoes because there's so many of them. What do you think is going to be the next big thing where we see something come up and we go, well, hold on, this is new, this is exciting, across any shoes, any type of shoe?
Yeah, I mean, this is pure speculation because I do get sometimes information early, but like this is a pure speculation on my part, and I just don't know. I don't even know if the science is there. But I suspect that we're going to swing back a little bit from super tall shoes to to lower stack shoes, and not because we want to run in racing flats anymore. I think that time is gone. I think we're not going to be running marathons in like Zoom streaks, and so but I think that the shoes will get lower to the ground because of advances in technology, whether it's other materials like carbon and advances that they're making in terms of how they're shaping it within the shoe, or things that they're doing with the foams or combinations of foams, where we could do more or get the same thing we're feeling now with less material. So the shoes will get lighter, the shoes will get like lower to the ground. It'll be harder to sell a little bit because like tall shoe, better shoe is an easy kind of like selling point right now in 2023. But I think going forward, like we're going to say 35 millimeter stack height, and people will be like, I don't know what that means until you tell me what's in it, and I think that's kind of the future.
How's this going to affect your Frankenstein shoe if you don't get to get this enormous stack height on it?
I'm not married to the tall stack height idea, but right now I'm in the mindset of taller is better for me, and so like it could change. The Frankenstein shoe might be, World Athletics legal.
Yeah. Cool. So what have you got coming up soon then? Is there anything that you're working on? Anything that you're whether that's racing that you're focused on, or from the point of view of the channel?
Yeah. So in a couple of days, I'm going to Atlanta. I'm going to be running the Peachtree Road Race. It's a giant 10K in the United States, one of the biggest races in the country. I'm really excited to do that because I've never had a chance to run that race before. So that's coming up really soon. We'll be doing a live stream live while we're down there,
Cool.
shakeout run, so a fun weekend of activity. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then the rest of the summer, it'll be a lot of travel, not a lot of racing for me. So I'll just be getting a lot of running in, but I'll be visiting some friends in Baltimore. And then I do have a couple of stops in Europe coming up as well later in the year. So not really, I can't really announce all of that quite yet. But I will be in some places where I think that a lot of other people will be later this summer in Europe.
Exciting. Well, we might be around some of those. Visit
Well,
Europe.
hopefully I'll see you then. I'll tell you when we get off camera.
And so, okay, then second to last question. So does that mean you are not really following a training plan at the moment?
That's true. That's true. So like, I kind of mentioned that I might be going to Berlin. So I'm like kind of like staying close to ready to jump into a marathon training plan, is kind of where I'm at. I'm kind of like in a holding pattern. But I'm not really doing too many hard workouts. I've been getting ready for this 10K. I've been doing a couple of shorter workouts. But like, I'm not really in a hard training program right now.
What's the aim for the 10K?
I mean, it's going to be hot and it's going to be hilly, so maybe mainly just survive. So like, we'll see. I think if I can finish this 10K at like my PR marathon pace, that'll be a victory. I'm not even sure I can do that.
So are you still in the world of trying to break your PBs, or have you left that now?
I think maybe I have a couple of years left of trying to chase those, so I'm going to take advantage of those while I can. And so I still have a couple of goals left. But there's no more like big round numbers to chase now that I've broken 3. And so not to be like, oh, poor me, I have no like more dragons left to slay. But it does make it a little bit harder to be like, I'd really like to get under 255. That's not as like that doesn't like,
Doesn't mean as lot, does
inspire
it?
people like being like, I want to break 3,
Yeah.
So like it makes it a little bit difficult for me to kind of like, why am I working so hard again? I can't remember because I want another minute and a half. Is that really what this is all about?
It just sort of falls into the ether, doesn't it? Once because I got a sub 3 when I was in Chicago when I saw you, and that was I think I could have got about 254, but I sort of held back a bit at the end, thinking, don't push it. Don't need to.
Yeah, it was a hot
go
day.
Crazy. Got my sub 3. I'm not gonna play around with it. But now, yeah, it's like I'm doing Berlin. I'd like a fast time, but I don't just want a sub 3. So the next thing is probably like, because I got 255 in Chicago, it's like, I'm gonna have to get sub 250 now.
Right.
And knowing how hard it is to get a sub 3, it's like, it's just not fun thinking about it. And also if you do it, it's like, I've got a sub 250. It's not really a milestone, is it? It's like, okay, you just got a bit faster.
Exactly. So it's like, what did you get? I got to say I got a PB. That's about it. That's going to have to be enough.
Yeah. So it's a tricky one. I'll be in that same sort of world now. There's no real major milestones. Well, I'm going to try and do a sub 120 half, but that's a big ask. So yeah,
that's speedy. That's really speedy.
Yeah. Probably won't do it, but got to have something to set your sights on. You got to have something to tell people that I'm not at the point where I'm saying, I'm just going to go and enjoy it yet. I'm still feeling a little bit competitive about stuff. Okay, so the last question is not really about running, kind of about running. So what I'm trying to do with all the guests that we have on the podcast, get 3 songs from them and add them to a playlist so people can listen to it if they'd like to. So you've got 3 song choices. You've got to listen to them for a whole marathon. So not so bad for you if you're getting a sub 3, so you're not listening to them too much. What 3 songs are you picking that you've got on loop for that whole race?
I'm really bad with song names because I almost never look at the device that's playing the music anymore because I'm either like in the car or I'm listening to it on the run. So I'll give you like kind of artists because I can't give you any more song names anymore. So I would say one would be like a Linkin Park, especially like the Reanimation album. I feel like any one of those songs I could probably listen to on repeat for a really long time. And then there's an artist, Apache, who I really enjoy, and I could probably I only need 2. Like between those 2, like just pick 3 songs between those 2 artists, that'd probably be enough. Because I really just like running to that one. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but the best way I can describe it is if you taught AI to make angry classical music, it sounds like robots are making classical music, and it's a very like electronic.
I'm gonna go listen to this.
And it's,
afterwards.
it's a little bit on the angry side. So I'm like, it's perfect for marathoning for me. So that's
So
something
you'll
that I
say
would
you
really enjoy.
run angry marathons.
I've realized that running angry is not so great for marathons because then you always running a marathon well is about discipline. So like maybe not the best for the entire, but it's really good for workouts. So like the workouts, I like to listen to angrier music for the workouts because I feel like it helps you get through those reps. Um, and so and then listening into on the marathon will be fun. Although lately I have not been listening to music during a race.
Okay.
So and, I haven't really listened to music during a marathon for
Is
a
that
couple
because
of
you're
weeks.
filming?
It's part of it, but like I'm also like the guy running around in the race with a selfie stick. And so like if I'm also like listening to music, people are gonna be even angrier at me. So I'm just like, all right, I will just do one weird thing during this race, and then I'll be holding the camera. I will refrain from using music, but I also do feel like there's a benefit to me in racing without music because I've done it with music before too. So I prefer to race without music.
Okay, and then one last question specifically for you.
Okay.
Do you ever, when you're running a marathon and you're filming it, or in any of the race, and you've got your GoPro, do you think, I wish I wasn't carrying my GoPro now because this is tough?
That happened to me the first couple of times, but I run with it every day now, and so I'm very much used to it, and so I don't really even notice it. Like to the opposite of that, when I don't have the camera, it made me really upset. So when I ran my first sub 3, it was at Grandma's Marathon almost exactly a year ago. Ben Johnson was pacing me, and he was like, it was late into the race, and I was struggling. And he's like, "Well, I'll take your camera, and then I'll carry it for you." I'm like, "I don't need you to carry it for me." He's like, "Well, I'll film you for a little while." I was like, "Fine." So he filmed me for a minute, and I thought he was going to give it back, but instead he took off. And so then I don't know if he did it on purpose or not, but now I was like, well, now I got to go catch this guy because I want the camera. I feel weird not running with the camera, so like that actually helped me get out of a little bit of a funk in the moment because I didn't have the camera with me. So I think the opposite is true. Um, there are only times when if I don't have the camera, it causes me a lot of distress.
Maybe a smart bit of coaching there from Ben Johnson.
He's a running genius. So yeah,
Well, he's a
very
very
well.
good runner. Yeah. Cool. Well, that was great. Thank you so much for coming on, Mike. That was really
Thanks
really
so much.
interesting. I got some definitely got some answers that we haven't heard before. So yeah, really really insightful stuff. So yeah, hopefully we'll get a chance to meet up again soon at one of a race
Yeah,
around the world somewhere.
yeah, I can't wait.
Cheers, man. Catch you later.
All right, thanks, guys.